Hello and welcome to the Action Network podcast, UFC 318 betting preview. I'm Sean Zerillo, joined today by Billy Ward to help you break down this weekend's UFC card and give you our best bets, top props, favorite underdogs, and more. And if you'd like to tell some of the bets that we discuss on today's show, make sure to find the quick slip links both in the podcast and the video description, or go to actionnetwork.com/bet now. 14 fight card from the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans, Louisiana for Dustin Poirier's retirement fight and the BMF title bout between Max Holloway and Dustin Poirier. Fight is minus 135 to go to a decision, plus 105 to end inside the distance. Billy and I are both aligned on Holloway this week, and the market has steamed in his direction. I make Holloway about a minus 170 favorite in this matchup after accounting for the public data that I incorporate into my model. Dustin has won the first two fights in what will be a trilogy between the pair. He won at UFC 143 in 2012, triangle armbar submission. He also won a decision at UFC 236 in April of 2019 for the interim lightweight title, beat Max 49-46 on all three scorecards. Dustin has a 3-inch reach advantage, but I don't think he's much or as big compared to Holloway as he used to be. My main take going into this fight kind of is off the back of my take going into the Gaethje fight, where Max gave himself time to finally grow into the 155-pound division, finally added some muscle and moved up the proper way when he was coming up to fight for the interim title. Dustin did have a big size advantage over him. I don't think that that is going to be the case anymore, as he proved in the fight against Gaethje. I think his power is just a little bit up from where it was previously. I think he's added a little bit muscle into his frame as he's entered his late 30s or mid 30s. The concern obviously coming off of the knockout loss against Dustin Poirier, do we see any sort of chin regression, skill regression from Holloway after such a brutal knockout? But by the numbers, he is the more efficient striker, outstriking opponents by about 2.2 strikes per minute compared to 1.1 for Dustin. Dustin does have the grappling upside, controls about 50% of grappling positions throughout his career. Max just 39%, but I don't expect them to spend much time grappling on the mat. If anybody does have success, though, I do think it's likely to be Dustin. But I like Max, and I like Max the longer the fight goes. I may even consider live betting him here after round 2, after round 3, because he should continue to build and make adjustments the longer the fight goes. And I do think Dustin in his late 30s just doesn't have the ability to sustain his style for 25 minutes anymore. I think he'll be competitive throughout the first 15, but I think Max pulls away down the stretch in the championship round. So Billy, we're aligned on this fight. Want to hear your thoughts, though, any analysis that you might have that may differ from my own. And then also with regard to the total that goes to decision prop, I do show slight value on the over or goes to decision. I think I make that line about minus 170. I'm more interested in playing Holloway than I am in playing the GTT prop, though, just because of the pace that this fight is likely to take place at. I think Dustin probably has no interest in going out with anything but a war in his final fight. So give me your thoughts on Holloway and then also the total on this fight as well.
Yeah, I lean to the under on that for some of the reasons you mentioned. Like, there's a pretty non-zero chance that one or both of them does the point to the center of the cage thing in the first second of the fight, right? Like, they might not even wait till later on, which doesn't mean they'll just stand there the whole time, but like, we could see that multiple times in this fight. I'm pretty sure if either guy feels like they're losing down the stretch, they're just going to slug too and probably get themselves knocked out. Like, there's a lot of, outside the normal handicapping factors, I think you got to look at for the total here. I've been on Holloway since last week, and I have incorrectly assumed this whole time that we would eventually get a better price on him. Like, this is Poirier's retirement fight. He's very popular. I thought there would just be a ton of casual money coming in on Poirier. Obviously, that has proved wrong, and you're kind of getting some worse prices on Max right now, which I don't love. I think there's still a chance that at 6, 7 p.m. tomorrow, we start seeing a bunch of money come in on Poirier, a bunch of parlay money. Like, maybe Drake puts $500,000 on Dustin here and pushes the line down for the rest of us. None of that would shock me. So I'm actually not betting this one as it stands now. I think I'll still come in with a Holloway bet, even if the price doesn't get better, but I'm trying to get as greedy as I can and hope we get a better line on that. Also, Holloway by knockout, I think is an interesting take, just because Poirier, as you alluded to, will probably try to go out on his shield Only thing I would say about the grappling that you mentioned is Poirier probably gives away at least one round here trying to jump a guillotine at some point. He's never hit one in his career. He loves it for some reason, despite it being the dumbest submission in the world that no one should ever try to do. He just loves it. He's going to jump at least one. And maybe he jumps one early in a round and gives away a round or two. So that pushes me a little bit more towards Holloway. It would not shock me to see him try like 3 or 4 in this fight just for the sake of the meme or the bit or whatever. Because what else are you doing when you're going out at the granddaddy of them all, the Smoothie King Center in New Orleans?
Yeah, it's his last chance to pull a guillotine. He did it, like 7 different times against Benoit Saint-Denis, and his corner kept yelling at him to stop doing it. Didn't do it against Islam. He resisted all urges to do it against Islam. I feel like he has to do it one more time in his final fight, right? He just loves doing it too much. So, yeah, over half a guillotine attempt from Dustin Poirier, maybe the lock of this card. Let's move on to our fight of the night, though. Paulo Costa at plus 195. I'm trying to find out whether he did weigh in already this morning and actually confirm that this fight is taking place. So Costa has not weighed in yet. Kopylov has weighed in. He hit the 185-pound mark. Costa coming in about plus 200. Kopylov around minus 230 in the middleweight division, assuming that this fight takes place. Fight is about minus 160 to go to a decision, plus 130 to end inside the distance. We're both interested in Costa here, but in different directions. I think you like him pre-fight. I'm more interested in waiting live. If I do have a pre-fight ticket on Costa, I want him by decision at plus 450, but I'm going to wait live probably because we have seen Kopylov a lot start fast and then fade the longer his fights go. Now, it's something that he may have fixed because he did finish Chris Curtis in the 3rd round, 459 of round 3 in his last fight. The cardio did seem like it got a little bit better in that matchup, but right before that, split decision with Cesar Almeida, a number of losses where he was leading early and then ended up giving the fight away in the 2nd, 3rd rounds. He is the more efficient striker by the numbers, outlanding opponents by about a half a strike per minute. Costa getting outlanded by 0.6 strikes per minute. But as I said, Costa can maintain high volume. He landed about 160 strikes against Sean Strickland across 5 rounds, 160 against Marvin Vettori, 5 rounds, 118 against Yoel Romero. I think in an extended fight, Costa going to be competitive on volume, could ultimately steal a decision. So Costa by decision at plus 450 and then live after round 1 is my approach. Billy, I think you like him on the money line pre-fight, so where do you like that down to? And then you also like Costa to land at least 1 takedown. What's your price target on that too?
Yeah, before I get into that, I thought for sure you were going to say this fight is minus 160 to actually happen when you were saying it's minus 160 to go to a decision as you were setting that one up. But
I'd say it's plus 160 to happen right now, considering Costa hasn't weighed in. So
yeah, I mean, as he said in the past, that's your personal problem if he doesn't make weight. He doesn't care. That's on you to take the fight or not. So there's a couple elements to this. Costa's back is clearly against the wall. He's 1-4 in his last 5. His last 6 or 7 opponents have all been former champions or title challengers. And for the most part, he hasn't really gone out there trying to win fights as goal number 1. Like, goal number 1 has been to go out there and have a good time, right? And then goal number 2 is to win the fight. I am banking a little bit on him reversing that and realizing, like, hey, you got to win some of them, right? You can be the silly guy on Twitter all you want, and that's great, but, like, you got to win at least occasionally or people are going to stop caring and stop being interested to pay you to do that. If he does come out and do that, you mentioned the volume. I like that. He's just so much bigger and stronger than Kopylov. Again, he might miss weight by 7 pounds here and just be like, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. So I think he can get some bully takedowns. We've seen him do that in the past. The Luke Rockhold fight was a really good example. Landed a takedown on Marvin Vettori, which is pretty hard to do. I think the skills are there more than he uses them, which makes sense because when you come out and starch a bunch of people for your first 4 or 5 fights, you're like, oh, I'm, the best striker ever. I don't need to worry about that base that I have. So if he comes out and uses that, I think that correlates pretty nicely with him winning the fight, even if he doesn't grapple him to death, but mix some takedowns in, make Kopylov worry about it, make him carry his weight a little bit to attack that cardio, as you talked about. That is plus 200 the last I looked, him just to get a takedown. I put in our sheet, I wanted his money line and him to get a takedown as separate bets. I think I might just SGP those two together because I thought there'd be more correlation by the books built in there, but it's plus 575. with a DraftKings SGP for both those things to happen. And that seems like they should correlate much more than that, right? Like that's pretty much just the mathematical odds of those two things happening at market price, where you'd think they'd be sharp enough to say, like, if he gets a takedown, he's also more likely to win. Probably how I'm attacking it now, unless we get some huge line movement on either way. It doesn't make sense to me how they've priced those together. So I'd rather just take a little swing. And then if and when this fight doesn't happen, I've only got a quarter unit out there on a long shot sprinkle instead of them holding my money until the fight happens and then refunding it like after the event, because books are really annoying about that, where they'll cancel a fight on Thursday and not give you your money back until the fight was supposed to happen. So we've also got that factor built into it. I think that's what I'm doing now. But yeah, I mean, check for my full card tomorrow, which I'll tweet out if and when we have something approaching confirmation that this fight will happen.
Paulo Costa has just hit weight at 185 pounds. We will see whether he's able to rehydrate overnight and actually make it to the fight in time, whether he chugs any bottles of wine tonight, gets a little hungover before the fight like he did supposedly against Izzy. Maybe the best all-time hindsight excuse for why a guy lost the fight ever, not being able to sleep and deciding that the method would be to chug a bottle of wine. We do believe it.
Everybody else gives those excuses.
That's exactly what he did.
Right. Usually you hear those and you're like, yeah, okay, sure you did, buddy. With Costa, you're like, yeah, no, you probably did. I expect that to have been what happened. Why wouldn't you?
Still want to know what was in Otman Izaitar's brother's bag that he brought to the hotel in Abu Dhabi. That remains the biggest mystery, I think, from pre-fight, post-fight excuses in recent years. Let's move on, though, to our favorite underdogs on this card. We've got a few that we're targeting. A bunch of other fights I want to talk about just because I think there's dog value. Even if I'm not necessarily playing them, it could be a spot to potentially pass on the favorite, or at least be a little risk averse, maybe take some shots from a DFS perspective. But my favorite underdog, one that I will be betting on this card, is Marvin Vettori at about plus 185 and then also plus 260 by decision against Brendan Allen. Marvin, the underdog in a fight that is heavily juiced to go to a decision, minus 260 to GTD. Allen is more of a submission threat, and when his fights extend, his game does tend to fall apart. Also a fast starter, and then his cardio tends to fade in rounds 2 and rounds 3 as well. We often talk about with Brendan Allen, able to get the takedowns, able to get to good positions, but then does not prioritize control or positioning. He tends to go for submissions, falls off going for them, and then puts himself in a bad position to end the round. I think it's very possible that Allen could initiate a takedown here, get on top, go for a submission, and then Vettori switches and gets on top of him. You look at the control rate career for clinch grappling time in the UFC, Vettori has controlled 76% of grappling positions. Allen just 55% control rate. Granted, he has faced more grapplers, I think, compared to Vettori. More guys have tried to grapple him, more grappling, back and forth grappling fights, but overall, Allen does tend to create grappling scrambles and then get the worst of them at times because he's going for a submission and trying to finish the fight rather than winning minutes. So I do think Vettori is the better minute winner here, not only in terms of the grappling potentially and holding position, but also in terms of strike volume. I just think he's likelier to win rounds 2 and 3 than he is to win round 1. So Vettori a little bit pre-fight, plus 185. And then by decision, plus 260. I'd bet those down to about plus 145 and plus 225. And then live after round 1, I'll be targeting Marvin Vettori as well. Billy, what bets do you like on this fight? Just Vettori money line, any other props for you? And then do you like him on the live line too?
Yeah, I think probably just the money line. The good news for you is that you got, assuming you bet it at plus 185 when you put that in our sheet, you got some solid CLV. The bad news is even the plus 185s are gone after Vettori opened at plus 200 earlier this week. Now I think plus 165 by the time you listen to it. Who knows if those will even be there, which is a pretty strong indicator of the sharp side of this fight. I'm kicking myself for not making that like a luck ratings fight and taking it there. Marvin Vettori has never been submitted. He's fought some good grapplers, like it's been a while, but never been submitted. Usually very hard to take down. Jared Cannonier getting 4 on him was kind of weird, but outside of that, really never been a guy who's been controlled on the ground much. And as you pointed out, Brendan Allen, it's submission or bust for him. He doesn't win minutes or beat you up so much with the grappling. He's just very good at snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Brendan Allen is, like, skills wise, ability wise, he should probably be like a top 5-ish or so middleweight right now, but he just manages to not win fights that he should. Like, I don't know a better way to put it. Like, there's just options. Even I thought even against Hernandez, he had a shot to out grapple him, but just didn't do the things he needed to do to take the most obvious path to victory there. So when you factor that in, and the submission defense and the cardio and output down the stretch, pretty easy to get there on Vettori. I think I'd take him to like plus 150 pre-fight, and then after that, just hold out for live or Vettori by decision or round 3/decision or SGPs with over half a round. Any of those iterations of this fight going long and Vettori doing better as it goes long.
Love that. Let's talk about another fight that could be good from a live betting perspective. I certainly think it is. Vinicius Oliveira against Kyler Phillips. Phillips often wins round one. He's a very consistently fast starter, very explosive in the first round. But I think Vinicius Oliveira clearly has the cardio advantage. Phillips, time and time again, tends to fade after the opening round. So I projected Phillips as a pre-fight favorite, minus 105. But I do like Lock Dog live after round one. So Phillips plus 135 pre-fight, then try to get a live ticket on Oliveira live after round one. Also project this fight to go to a decision more often than the market suggests, but I think it could be a very high-paced, aggressive fight between these two. And with the way Phillips fades down the stretch, I think there's a chance that Oliveira could finish him late in round 3 or potentially round 2 as well. So I know you like Oliveira. What price target are you looking for pre-fight? And I'd imagine you would echo my live thoughts here as well.
Yeah, definitely on the live thoughts. It's one of those where Phillips probably needs to grapple here. So if he either fails on takedowns or gets some but doesn't do a ton with them, doesn't rack up some damage, that's probably the time to jump in live. I'll probably have like half a unit on Oliveira pre-fight. I think the price has gotten better on him throughout the week last I looked. Yeah, it's moved a little bit towards Phillips. If we can get inside at minus 150 on Loke Dog, I think that's probably about right. He's done well in similar stylistic matchups in the past. It's a bit of a step up, but not as much as I initially assumed, because he fought, I think Bernardo Sopai is actually awesome, even though that was Sopai's debut when he fought Loke Dog.
Yeah.
And they fought Ricky Simone in there, which, probably not quite Kyler Phillips level. And he fought Said Nurmagomedov. So, like, some tough guys in there, and has passed all the grappling tests against them. I think he does the same against Phillips. I think he might just actually be that good, where we look back 2 years from now and say we can't believe we got minus 140 on him against a 10th to 12th ranked fighter in his division. So yeah, any version of Loke Dog I'm kind of okay with. The live is a little bit touchy in terms of like when you get that price that it's going to be better, because I don't think the better price will be there for very long. I think once it turns, it's going to turn in a hurry, if that makes sense.
Few big underdogs in this card that we want to mention. First being Robert Valentin, about plus 400 or higher against Atiba Gauthier. Gauthier is just 22 years old, still pretty green, but 7 years younger. Elite athlete, looks like a super prospect in this division, potentially 2 inches taller, 5-inch reach advantage. But Valentin has faced 2 grapplers thus far in the UFC, basically had no chance given his style. Finally going to get the ability to strike this one out. His KO prop is about 12-1. 14-1. Fight is minus 750 to end inside the distance. I don't think you could be super wrong poking Valentin here over plus 400. I make his money line closer to plus 300. KO prop 12-1, 10-1. I think those are certainly acceptable as well. Gauthier probably knocks him out, but Billy, any interest at all in taking Robert Valentin on the money line this weekend?
I had that thought earlier in the week. The problem with saying he'll finally get to strike it out is he just doesn't have the physical tools that Gauthier has to strike it out. Like, honestly, if I'm Valentin, if he gets a takedown here, he might look like a minus 500 favorite. I don't know that we know anything about Gauthier's grappling. I wrote him up for the Contender Series and was like, he's got one thing he does well. He just does it super, super well. And the physical advantages are obviously massive. So I don't love it. I think, like, if you wanted to get really silly and go Valentin by submission, that's probably his clearest path. You get a takedown, Gauthier turns his back trying to get up, something like that. That's probably how I would play it, because you really can't be wrong at, a 20-1 submission prop. I get it. I'm leaning that way, but I'm probably abstaining myself.
Another big underdog, Jackson McVeigh Line is actually moving in on McVeigh. He was closer to plus 500 a couple days ago, moving closer to plus 400 now. I make his line about plus 313 in his UFC debut against Bruno Ferreira. He was supposed to fight Sidrigas Dumas, who I think pulled out of separate fights. Neither of these guys, though, have seen the scorecards in their pro careers. McVeigh does have one decision as an amateur, but this fight is minus, I think, minus 1750, minus 1400,
Yeah.
minus 1400 to end inside the distance. So under 1.5 is used to minus 240. Somebody is likely to finish this fight. It is obviously likely to be Bruno Ferreira, but considering the high variance nature, Billy, any interest on McVeigh 4-1, McVeigh inside the distance 5-1, or any other bets on this fight?
No, I can't get there because Feda actually can grapple. Like, he was a 3-time national judo champion, which people forget about. But I think if he gets in trouble, he can bust that out pretty much at any point and kind of take a pause and win the fight that way. Tremendous DFS fight, though. Everyone's going to be on Fajeda for a good reason. If you're not playing Fajeda, you have to play McVeigh, because anything other than Fajeda domination means McVeigh easily outscores his salary. So it's a fun like strategy question for DFS where I don't really like McVeigh's odds, but I will have some of him because you're just getting massive leverage on the field by doing that. So that's the way I'm approaching my McVeigh exposure here, is just through being over the field on DFS. And the same thing with another fighter we're gonna talk about, or no, we don't have this one, Dulatov Fugit, where you kind of have to play one or the other, because either Dulatov gets a massive score, or if it extends, that means Fugit is going to easily outperform his salary. So that's what I'm doing with these long underdogs. I know you have bets on a couple of them, or considering bets on a couple of them, but that's my approach this time.
Let's go to your second of two underdogs and one of my top props as we move from our underdog section into our prop section. Carly Judas versus Nicole Cagliari, the first fight on the card, women's flyweight division. Women's flyweights typically go to a decision about a 68% clip, minus 212 implied. I am closer to 75% on this fight. Judas coming off of a head kick win in her last fight, I think is giving us value here potentially on the GTD. And you like this fight from the Cagliari perspective, so you expect it to be more competitive than the line suggests, which to me indicates that this fight is likelier to go all 15 minutes. So I like the GTD here up to minus 250. I also do show value on the favorite, Carly Judas, by decision to minus 115. But given your thoughts on Cagliari, I certainly prefer the GTD prop and having equity on either woman winning by decision. So give me your thoughts on Cagliari here. She is 3 inches shorter. She's at a 4-inch reach discrepancy. You think she overcomes that with grappling?
Yeah, that is 100% the logic here. She has 5 takedowns in her 2 fights between the Contender Series and the UFC, so about more than one per round, because one of her fights ended early. She landed 3 takedowns on Ernesto Caracati. Caracati took down Judas. So like, we can kind of see, not that it always works that way, but in terms of grappling levels where it's at. I felt more confident in the Cagliari pick when I saw that you were betting it to go to a decision, because the underdog in a fight we expect to go to a decision. If you think the minus 190 is a value, making the true price north of minus 200, the underdog even a stronger value. Also worth pointing out here, we're going to get some weird decisions, especially in early fights. We don't go to Louisiana a lot. There's going to be some local judges that we don't know. Usually the local judges work the first handful of fights on the card. Like, it's not going to be some dude you've never heard of. In the Max Holloway Dustin Poirier fight, that's going to be a bunch of guys you've heard of and probably also don't think are very good judges, but that's a different story. So when you're banking on some of these long underdogs, the ones early on the card that you think are going to go to a decision, who knows, man? Like, these scorecards could be all over the place. I was looking at the fight to go to a split decision. The only book I could find it on was DraftKings, and it was plus 380. So they're hip to that. Like that, I'm not betting plus 380 to go to a split on any fight ever, but this one's got a shot at going to a split. Like, all it takes is one judge who wasn't paying attention or doesn't know the rules or is just some boxing guy they rolled out for that to happen. If you want a fun sprinkle, it makes a lot of sense. It's a hilarious thing to root for if you've ever sweat one of those bets, because somebody starts doing well and you root for the other person. They start doing well. You go, no, I need you to come back. It's fun. Like, it's not financial advice, but like, if you want to add some excitement and kind of play along with all of our actual bets, right? Because you need it to go to a decision to be a split. You need the underdog to overperform her line for it to be a split. I think that's just a fun way to have some action on a fight that, like, is pretty hard to care about, if we're all being honest.
I'm trying to pull up Cagliari's point spread. Cagliari plus 3.5, even money. That seems like a good bet,
Yeah,
right?
they know, but they know, right? Like it should be even money. I don't think it's not a bad bet, but when her money line is as high as plus 270 now, just take the money line. Like it's not. I also think I will say on a slightly more serious note, Judas, I believe, has much more finishing upside. She throws a lot of volume, obviously has some power. If Cagliari wins, it's just going to be like kind of a semi-boring grappling match. Maybe she pulls off a submission, probably not. So that takes some of the value out of the point spread on the Cagliari side, because like it's going to be pretty clear when she's winning rounds if she's dominating from the top, I think. So, I get it, but like they've done much better at pricing these point spreads than they did when they first came out, because we were cleaning up on those for a few months in there, but they've sorted it out.
100%. A couple of, let's go to your top prop, and then we'll backtrack to some other totals. Let's talk about the Kevin Holland fight. Kevin Holland against Daniel Rodriguez. Holland coming in here about as big of a favorite as we've really ever seen him against other ranked talent, but he should have Daniel Rodriguez covered everywhere in this matchup. 6 years younger, 2 inches taller, 7-inch reach advantage. As we always discuss, Billy, there is a big difference between welterweight Kevin Holland and middleweight Kevin Holland. And this is welterweight Kevin Holland, who supposedly had no trouble making the weight limit this morning, came in right near the start of the session, weighed in fine. I projected Holland around minus 650 on the money line. I like him as a parlay piece for this card on Saturday. I just think Daniel Rodriguez is past it at this point of his career. I think Holland is going to look twice as fast as he does. Just the question is, how Holland gets it done, because D-Rod is pretty durable. I think Holland could overwhelm him with speed, but Holland likes to play around and to put on a show too. And, he might just beat up D-Rod and play around and, do some showmanship stuff across 15 minutes. So you do like Holland to win the fight inside the distance. I had difficulty getting my projected number there. I basically have his like decision, submission, knockout equity all right around a third. All three lines are all like around plus 240-ish for me. That's roughly where the market has it too. So it's almost like Holland, however he wants it in this matchup. You like him to finish this fight though. Where would you bet that up to?
I do. He's finished 5 of 6 at welterweight. 5 of his 6 welterweight wins, I should say. So just the power just plays up so much better at 170. Unfortunately, as you alluded to with the money line, like the market is caught on to Kevin Holland at welterweight being an entirely different animal than Kevin Holland at middleweight. So you kind of have to take some shots at, methods or other things. Probably take it to like minus 170 or so. The more interesting angle I have here is I think D-Rod is actually more likely to win a decision if it goes there, right? Like under the assumption that we go to a decision. And that's because his volume is much higher than Holland's. Like you mentioned Holland playing around. D-Rod outlands Holland by about 3 significant strikes per minute. I don't think they'll be exceptionally significant, but he's just going to be doing so much more that a lot of times that can sway judges in your favor. So what I'm doing here is I'm betting 1 unit on Holland to win inside the distance. That's minus 150. And then half a unit on the decision only market for D-Rod, which gets refunded if either man gets a finish. I feel like covering most of the likely outcomes here, it works out to a pretty slight profit, especially if D-Rod gets the decision, because the inside the distance doesn't refund. But I'm kind of trying to cover the most likely outcomes on both sides here. Don't feel super great about it because, as you pointed out, Kevin Holland is an enigma, right? He might just mess around. He might get some takedowns and then just stand back up for no reason. But I think there's an angle there where Rodriguez's volume helps him if it does go to a decision.
Let's talk about a couple of totals that I like. Daniel Zellhuber against Michael Johnson on the main card. I like this fight to end inside the distance or the under 2.5 rounds at about minus 108. In addition to Zellhuber by KO at plus 185, it could end up being a relatively low-paced, boring decision, but there is a huge age gap between these two, a 13-year age gap. Zellhuber 26, Johnson 39. Zellhuber also 3 inches taller, has a 4-inch reach advantage. Johnson has the better data, against better competition, but he is old. But plus 1.4 to minus 0.4 strike differential per minute in favor of Michael Johnson. So I think he can be competitive on the minutes. He also has some offensive grappling upside, but given the relative age of these two, the trajectory of their careers. And then potentially, most importantly, Zellhuber's ability to use his length coming forward and Johnson's inability to box going off of the back foot. I think Zellhuber is a terrible matchup for Michael Johnson. That said, he does leave himself open defensively, absolutely capable of getting clipped and knocked out himself. So I do want equity on either to finish. The under 2.5 to about minus 135. It's currently minus 108. The ends inside the distance I would take up to about minus 175. And Zellhuber by knockout, I project around even money. I like that down to plus 110. Billy, the under 2.5, Zellhuber by KO. Either of those you like? Any other ways you consider betting on this fight?
Yeah, I love them both. The wheels got to fall off Michael Johnson at some point. You mentioned his like statistical data, but half of that was accrued by beating up Joe Lozon in 2013 on Fuel TV or whatever. So like that's not super relevant here a dozen years later. And if you look at his recent record, like they haven't done the thing where they've just fed him to prospects like at all. Like he fought Atman Azaitar, who that's a weird story. Darius Flowers, Carlos Diego Ferreira knocked him out, but Diego's like close to the same age, right? Like they're similar in age. The last time he fought anyone, I mean, like that good was what Stevie Ray, future PFL champ in like 2019 or tournament winner. I don't know. I don't follow the PFL that close. And now they're doing the thing where they feed him to a prospect finally. So that's about as likely a time as ever for the wheels to fall off the old guy. So love Zellhuber by knockout or finish or the under, any of that stuff. It's got to happen eventually, right? Like dude's been fighting as a professional for 20 years now, I think, or damn close to it. Like can't do that forever.
Yeah, he has a lot of fights. I mean, he's fought everybody. He fought Khabib.
Tony Ferguson.
How many pro fights is he at now? 30, 43? Yeah,
30
double the number of fights. Yeah. And Zellhuber has 17 pro fights. Literally like more than double the number of professional fights. Regardless of the 13-year age gap, I think there is a bigger like fight gap in age years there as well. We'll get to another fight in a moment that I think similarly about. But first, Marcin Prachnio against Jimmy Crute in the middleweight division. Two bad shins here, but I don't think either guy carries particularly significant power for the middleweight division. I think Prachnio's leg kicks are going to cause a problem for Crute. I think Crute's ability to potentially submit Prachnio on the mat, the likeliest ways this one finishes. And Crute is a proactive grappler, attempts 6 takedowns per 5 minutes at distance, completed about 53% of them in his career. And Prachnio does not have particularly good takedown defense, just a 54% clip of defended takedowns in his career. Also control rate, Crute 67%, Prachnio 15%. So you could see the grappling dominance potentially for Crute in the matchup, but Prachnio is the better striker, averaging about plus 2.8 strike differential per minute against his opponents. Crute minus 1.2. So Prachnio should have a 4-strike advantage per minute at distance just based upon the numbers. He has been submitted by arm triangle, though, in consecutive losses. I do worry about Crute potentially getting him down and submitting him. But overall, middleweight fights go to decision at about a 38% clip, plus 160 implied. I'm closer to 47% here. I would bet the GTD to plus 125. And then I also like Crute by decision. I projected that closer to plus 200. You can get 3-1 or higher. I like that down to plus 250. So Crute and Prachnio goes to decision. Crute by decision at plus 310. Billy, either of those bets you like?
Not really. I think Crute's probably going to maul him on the ground early. The only way I'm betting this one is Prachnio live, just because Crute has fallen apart in like what feels like 20 consecutive fights where he gets a 10-8 first. He's got, 2 draws in his last 3, and I believe they were both 10-8 first rounds, followed by losing the next 2. And then, later submission losses. Like, that's just what he does, so I'm not doing anything pre-fight here. If he doesn't get him out of there after the first round, we might see 10-1 or better odds on Prachnio, which is where I'd jump in. It wouldn't have to be 10-1, but I'm saying I would jump in after the first round. Are you looking up how we got to those draws?
Yeah, it was 10-8. Yeah, you know what? No, it was a 10-8 against Bellato in round 1. It was a 10-8 against Metafield in round 3. He actually reversed it in the Metafield fight. He lost the first 2 rounds and then came back and got a 10-8 in round 3. So, no, I do agree with you, though. Like, I tend to feel like he either gets it going, and is able to maintain it, or Pragno is going to show the ability to get up and keep getting up and then pick him apart at distance. I do think Pragno is certainly the better striker. Just do not trust either of their chins. So
Yeah.
not in love with it either, but I'm going with the value of, where my model pointed me this weekend. But yeah, in general, like not a lot of spots I'm in love with on this card. And even as we get to our best bet section, unfortunately, my best bet has really moved away from the price where it opened up. You got Dan Ige and your luck ratings earlier this week at about minus 170, minus 175. He's all the way up to minus 225 or higher today. I did project him at minus 287 in this fight. I would bet him up to minus 250. It is just getting to a point where it's a little bit more uncomfortable to bet him. I think in an alternative way to play Ige this weekend is his double chance prop, his decision or knockout double chance prop at minus 185. You see a bunch of submissions on his career record. Those really all came in his regional days, pre-UFC. He's not a guy who's looking generally to submit people, and also Patricio Pitbull, I would imagine, should be able to fend off any potential submission attempts that Danny Ige throws on, aside from a club and sub where he's basically already unconscious. But even looking at Ige's recent fights, he beat Sean Woodson on short notice. He's taken several short notice bouts. He was very competitive with Diego Lopez on short notice, literally hours notice, getting off of the couch. Ended up winning the third round of that fight. He's more durable. He carries more power. He's taller. He's longer, inch longer, 6-inch reach advantage. There's really, nothing that points me to Patricio Pitbull in this fight. I thought he looked like a severely diminished version of himself in his UFC debut against Yair Rodriguez. Outstruck 70-17 at distance and really did nothing competitive throughout. So Dan Ige is still much closer for me to his prime. Pitbull seemingly near the end of his career. I like Ige up to minus 250. And as I said, the decision or KO line, I think is fine at minus 185 up to minus 200 if you want a slight discount. Billy, what was your cutoff price for Dan Ige? And then any other props you like on this fight? Do you like him to win by knockout? I kind of lean to knockout. So how do you want to play this one?
Yeah, I don't think I'd go much past minus 200, but it's, as I always mention, like it's hard when you've anchored yourself to a price that's no longer there to imagine what you would do otherwise. Personally, if this gets any further, I'm probably just going to make an arbitrage bet on Pitbull and just not worry about this fight at all, because it'll be a fairly solid return if he gets north of plus 200. Like you, though, I think Pitbull might be just kind of washed. He was 1-2 in his last 3 fights before the UFC against, and the win wasn't super impressive or anything. As Jeremy Kennedy, in late in the third round, cool, but 1-2 coming in. And he's also tempted the MMA gods. I don't know if you saw this story. He said when he gets through Dan Ige, he'd like to be considered to fight Aaron Pico next week in Saudi Arabia or Dubai or wherever after Avoya pulled out. And like, that's just the surest way to make sure that doesn't happen, right? It's like to put that out there ahead of time publicly. Like, you're getting knocked out when you say that. So I guess that helps the knockout prop in my mind, at least unofficially. It's a little silly, but also like it is showing that you're looking past the guy in front of you who is heavily favored to beat you anyway, which is not something you should do. Ige should be out there saying, after I finish, Pitbull, fly me out there. That would make more sense to me. I digress. Yeah, I'm very happy to get the price I got. Might arbitrage or partially arbitrage out. It's possible this line continues to move even further, I think. It kind of hasn't stopped moving since Monday. Every time I look, it's a little farther. So we'll see what we can get.
Let's go to your best bet, Francisco Prado against Nikolai Veretennikov. Prado 1-3 in the UFC. His only win came over the aforementioned Atman Azaitar. I did bet him, though, against both Jake Matthews and Daniel Zellhuber. He took a round off of Zellhuber. Didn't look quite as good against Matthews. Couldn't really get it going. I believe he had changed camps right before the Matthews fight. So this is a guy who I think will continue to level up in his career. He's also 13 years younger than Veretennikov. So huge athleticism advantage. Veretennikov is 3 inches taller, 5-inch reach advantage. But I think Prado sustaining the power cardio throughout a 15-minute fight much likelier, and I do think he has full grappling upside here as well. My model actually showed value on the underdog, but Veretennikov 0-3 in the UFC. The losses are okay. Michael Morales, Danny Barlow, split decision. Austin Vanderford outgrappled him. That's probably not going to get thoroughly dominated in the wrestling here. But as I said, Prado could mix it up a little bit better. Is the younger man, I think, likelier to take over in the back half of the fight. So what's your price target on Prado, Billy? And then any of the props you like on this knockout?
This is one of the few bets on this card that I'm like very excited about. I think I'd take him probably minus 160 or something would be where I finally drew the line. Here's the thing. The line as it opened made sense based on their resumes, right? Like Prado's a slight favorite because he's 1-3 in the UFC, counting Contender Series, Veretennikov, 0-3 in the UFC. I see how we get there, right? That's based on what they've done in the past. One dude is 23 and training at American Top Team. The other guy is 35. So the 23-year-old training at American Top Team is very likely to have added a ton of that wrestling, right? He's in there with Dustin Poirier getting ready for this fight. All the best, wrestlers in that lightweight, welterweight range train there. His wrestling is going to be massively leveled up. It's a huge hole for Veretennikov. There's that. Also, Prado's in a weird spot where he's too big to make 155, but like just a little small on 170. That's going to make him look real rough against somebody like Jake Matthews, who's a massive welterweight. Veretennikov, not really as big, like thick-wise, muscle-wise. And kid's 23. He's still putting on muscle. We all weigh a lot more than we did at 23, I'm pretty sure. Maybe not Zerillo. You're still pretty slim. But I've put on a lot of weight since 23. I can't speak for anyone else. Some of it muscle. He's going to look more like a welterweight with each passing fight in this new division. And he's going to get so much better training at American Top Team. So very excited about this one. I think I'm just playing it straight up. I could see him knocking him out on the feet. I could also see that ATT grappling kicking in. So I don't want to get cute here. I just want to win my bet on Francisco Prado, who is much better than his record implies.
I was a little overweight when I was 23. It was probably 220. I think I'm closer to like 190 now. So yeah, definitely lighter than I was when I was 23.
You're the exception.
The cardio, sauna. Yeah, you know what? I'm staying in fighting shape. I'm trying to move down to welterweight, and we're gonna hover around 190 to make the cut easier. So the two fights we didn't get to for this weekend, I actually think there could be live angles on both of them, which is why I want to mention them before we jump off. First being Lukasz Brzeski against Ryan Spann. Spann always dangerous early, but has moved up to heavyweight and hasn't necessarily taken it seriously like he's moving a division. I think Brzeski, if he survives the first round, which is unlikely, I would target him live after round one. And then same with the Adam Fugitt against Islam Dulatov fight. Dulatov, not all male models, but this male model is very dangerous and very likely to win in round one. If Fugitt is still there after 5 minutes, though, I'm interested in betting on Fugitt live. So Brzeski live, Fugitt live, potential live spots in those two fights we did not touch on. Any of those live bets interest you, Billy? Any of those fights interest you from a betting perspective? I would imagine not, or we would have discussed them earlier.
Yeah, Ryan Spann is the heavyweight Terrence McKinney, where you can just bet him to win round one and then live bet against his opponent after, and you're very unlikely to be wrong in either of those directions. This fight actually reminds me of the Vitor Petrino fight last time, where we have, a somewhat talented but mercurial light heavyweight goes up to heavyweight, and they just feed him a dude who's 9-6-1 as a pro in Lukasz Brzeski. Spann should have no problem here. I'm with you in theory, but the odds of that actually getting there are not that great. And yeah, I mentioned Fugitt Dulatov from a DFS standpoint. If you think Dulatov can survive Fugitt can survive the opening round, tremendous DFS play. It's kind of like a cheap way to get some exposure where you'll move past everybody if you're right. So that's how I will be approaching that one. Dulatov, where I can afford him. Fugitt is kind of a contrarian angle there. To your point, I think your point is sharp. I just think I could make a lot more money by having him in a DFS lineup than trying to catch the live line at the right time and, with enough money to make it worth my while.
He's finished every win, including 10 in round 1, 5 in the first minute of his fight. So really looking forward to Dulatov's debut this weekend. That'll do it for our UFC betting preview. You can find more UFC betting content for both Billy and myself, both on actionnetwork.com and in the Action Network app. And if you'd like to instantly tail some of the bets that we discussed on today's show, make sure to look for the quick slip links both in the podcast and the video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/betnow. Don't forget to download that free award-winning Action Network app and sign up for Action Pro for immediate access to expert picks and analysis. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend. Enjoy the violence. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time.